You know, you asked a question about this 5-year-old kid. I actually saw this terrible story while I was coming to Minneapolis. We just left Toledo, Ohio this morning for an economic message event. And I see this story, and I'm a father of a 5-year-old, actually, a 5-year-old little boy. And I think to myself, oh my God, this is terrible. How did we arrest a 5-year-old? Well, I do a little bit more follow-up research. And what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien. And then when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? Are they not supposed to arrest an illegal alien in the United States of America? If the argument is that you can't arrest people who have violated our laws because they have children, then every single parent is going to be completely given immunity from ever being the subject of law enforcement. That doesn't make any sense. No one thinks that makes any sense. Now, you know, there are so many of these cases like that where if you just understand the context, there have been a number of situations that I've looked into personally where I say, wait a second, we don't want ICE arresting American citizens. They're supposed to be enforcing the immigration laws against illegal aliens. So then I look into it and I find out that the American citizen who was arrested took a swing at an ICE officer. You can't have that happen. And of course they have to defend themselves. And of course they have the right to detain somebody who assaults a law enforcement officer. Now, this is my point. Do we want these things to happen? Do we want these arrests to be so chaotic? No, we don't. These guys want it least of all, but if we had a little cooperation from local and state officials, I think the chaos would go way down in this community.
You have been watching Vice President JD Vance there take questions from reporters. He is not in Washington, as you can see. He is in Minneapolis after meeting with ICE officers and personnel there, with tensions, as you know, escalating in that city, in that state, over the course of the last couple of weeks after the death of Renee Good, the woman who was shot and killed by ICE officers, spurring huge demonstrations in and around Minneapolis, as well as coast to coast over the last couple of weeks. What you heard from the vice president there, a vigorous defense of the administration's actions, and a call to turn down the temperature, essentially, as the vice president put a lot of that onus on state and local officials. We have heard from the Democratic leaders of the city, of the state as well, who say it is, in their view, the federal government that is escalating tensions even further. I think we've got Maggie Vespa. You heard our correspondent who's been on the ground over the last 2 weeks in Minneapolis in the room, pressing the vice president repeatedly. Maggie, we're glad to have you there. And the vice president, to you, made the case, and you asked him about the way that people are feeling in Minneapolis. You've been talking to these folks on the ground who are telling you they don't feel safe, and it's because of the presence of ICE officers.
Right, Hallie, and these are people who live in the neighborhoods where these operations are happening, right? Like, they're the ones who are seeing the arrests play out firsthand. We're not talking about people who are reading headlines or seeing social media videos. Like, these are the Minnesotans and the Minneapolis residents who are living this. And so respectfully, with what the vice president is saying about the context that he says he wishes was included in different news articles that he's read or social media posts that he's seen, we have to relay what we're hearing from people here on the ground. And that is that this is, again, a historically large influx of federal officers. We have ICE, we have Border Patrol, we have the Bureau of Prisons here, 3,000 plus. When it was just 2,000 before the shooting of Renee Good, DHS said it was historic. And then it got bigger. And that in and of itself has scared people here in Minneapolis. They've told us. And then they've also witnessed these tactics firsthand. So you heard his answer. I mean, really, he said first and foremost that he wanted to point out murder rates that have come down nationally and kind of tried to tie that to immigration first and foremost. And then he kind of brought it back to the city of Minneapolis and said, listen, we don't see this in other cities where we're operating. We're not seeing it in Chicago. We're not seeing it in L.A. What's different about this? And you will note that one thing that was omitted was just, frankly, the size of this operation, especially when you compare it to the size of this city, Hallie. So lots of important points being pressed here. As you know, lots of threads going on in this story tied to different instances, different arrests that we're seeing. He was asked about the 5-year-old boy who was taken into custody this week that the school district's been sounding alarms about. That's a major one. So there was a lot to press him on, and that was a striking Q&A.
Yeah, the school district superintendent in that instance suggesting that another adult who was living in the house and was present at the time essentially begged, in her words, the ICE officers to let that little boy stay in the home. Maggie, there was another piece of this, and I know you've been reporting this out ever since it broke just about 12 hours ago, 18 hours ago, which is this memo that apparently authorizes ICE officers to take actions entering homes without prior approval from a judicial warrant. And you heard the vice president address that as well.
Right. We did, and he defended it. And effectively, we just want to be clear with people. This absolutely appears to be a policy change with ICE. He defended it as being legal and saying that most of what happens when it comes to immigration enforcement in the courts doesn't happen in criminal court. Therefore, it's rare that we would have a judicial warrant. But that has been the precedent that ICE has relied on when it comes to entering the homes of people they're looking to arrest. And now what we're seeing in this May 2025 memo that was just leaked here to Senator Richard Blumenthal's office is that as of May, and it seems that this is what they're training their newer hires with, they can now enter homes of people they're looking to arrest who have a final deportation order from a judge with something that's called an administrative warrant. It's an I-205. And basically, it's a lower bar. Listen, I talked to, and Hallie and you and I talked about this yesterday. I talked to our legal analysts about this and said, explain this to me. Just, is this legal? And our legal analyst said, technically, yes, but it is hotly contested because a lot of critics believe it just collides head on with protections under the Fourth Amendment against illegal search and seizure, and saying that it could very well be setting up a long battle in the courts. But you heard him defending it there. You heard him kind of getting into the nuances of the logistics there, which is kind of the theme of what he was stressing, saying all of this is nuanced, all of this has context that's being omitted, and he hit on it again on that point, Hallie. It's a good point.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.